ADHD struggles can seem, they're invisible, right? They're not as tangible as other struggles. It gets pushed off because it's just not taken as seriously, it seems, as other things. Yeah. And I'm not trying to say that it's more important or less important than anything else, but it's important to address it.
Hello, everybody. Today I am joined by Laura Skye, a VP of Content Strategy at Understood.org, host of the ADHD Aha podcast, and an editor with nearly 20 years in digital media. Laura has interviewed over 100 people about their ADHD journey, created a really amazing storytelling show in that space. We're going to ask some questions about the most interesting interviews you've done so far. But we're also going to ask a little bit about how you manage it all, which is something that you haven't really spoken about before. Leading a team, raising kids, having passion projects, how do you manage all of these different pieces with ADHD? So welcome. It's great to have you here, Laura.
Thanks so much, Skye. I'm really happy to be here.
So you mentioned, we'll just jump into it. You mentioned you were diagnosed with ADHD twice. Mm-hmm. What happened?
Just for good measure, let's do why do something once when you can do it twice? So I was seeing a therapist in my late 20s, and that therapist recommended that I go see a psychiatrist to help with anxiety treatment. So I saw the psychiatrist, and after meeting with me a few times, he called out something that kind of surprised me, and he noticed a behavior of mine, and then we decided together, like, let's check this out. Let's see if maybe you have ADHD. And I was like, okay, sure, whatever. I just kind of didn't really think much of it, which is strange because that's a big thing to lay on somebody, right? Like I think you might have ADHD. Anyways, ended up getting diagnosed, and I still didn't quite buy it. So I ended up seeking out a second opinion from another psychiatrist who then confirmed the diagnosis, right? And, if I'm thinking back to why I didn't buy it, it's a story that I'm sure you've heard so many times, Skye, which is, isn't that like a little boy's thing, right? Mm-hmm. Or I did so well in school, or I've succeeded at all these things in my life. How could it be possible that I have ADHD, right? Yeah. So I knew that I had ADHD, but I didn't know it. And I don't think I really knew, I didn't really grasp the power of what it meant to have ADHD until I had what I would call my aha moment, which I've talked about on the show that I host, ADHD Aha, in the very first episode. I went home one day to the house that I grew up in Ohio, and my mom was like, you got to get rid of some of these stuff. We got all these things in boxes. And I had all these old journals. And I started going through these boxes, and I found a journal, and I opened it up, and everywhere, all over the page, it said focus, 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 and like bubble letters and like small print, large print. These were my 12 and 13-year-old journals. And then I looked through all of these like stacks of journals, and I just kept finding that. And I was like, holy crap, I have been struggling with this. This has been a big deal in my life, and never really turned back since then.
Yeah. So for you, when you realized that this had been a big deal in your life, was there a sense of, I guess, sadness, relief to know? Like, how did you feel about that?
I mean, I broke down in tears when I saw that. And then all the memories started flooding back of when I was in middle school, high school, college, graduate school. Remember, I'm 30 years old at this point, 30, maybe even 31 years old at that point. And I just remembered how much I actually struggled despite getting straight A's. And despite playing sports and succeeding at all these different things, I just remember the overwhelming pressure that I always felt, and the stress that I felt to get everything done that felt out of the ordinary. And I can share some more examples with you if you're interested. But yeah, I was sad. Yeah. I was sad. I was grieving something.
Yeah, I think a lot of us do. I think that's why it's a good question, because sometimes it can feel, especially if you've spent a lot of money getting a diagnosis, you can spend thousands of dollars to figure out, lots of energy. It's almost like a puzzle, a very unfriendly ADHD puzzle to get diagnosed. And then when you do get diagnosed, there's that feeling of sadness.
Yeah. And I'm not sad about it anymore. But certainly at that time, I was like, oh my gosh, if only I had known what a difference that would have made. It would have explained so many things. I mean, I remember having Post-it notes stuck all over my bedroom, right, with just things. And I would carry a notebook around with me everywhere I went. And I would tell myself growing up that it's just because you're a writer and you're creative and you want to take note of all these things that you're seeing. But I was looking through these old things and I'm like, I wasn't taking notes on like, they weren't poetic. It was like, make sure you hand an assignment. And also in 5 years, make sure you apply for colleges. Just this lack of prioritization, just write everything down so you don't have to think about it anymore. It was the kind of the ramblings of a chaotic mind.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned, you said ADHD often gets pushed aside because other things feel more important. You said your grief, career pressure, sobriety. Why do you think that ADHD can sometimes be the last thing that people address?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And it's definitely something I've seen in all the interviews on ADHD Aha. Not all of them, but in many of them, like, first I addressed this. I addressed my sobriety. I addressed my career struggles. I addressed my anxiety, my depression. And then I focused on the ADHD. And that's certainly been true of me and for different circumstances in my life. I think it's two reasons, Skye. I've been thinking about this since we last chatted. And I think one reason is that there's so much shame tied up with ADHD. There's this feeling like we're not allowed to struggle with something like that. There's this feeling of if I could just push a little bit harder, I would be able to overcome this. But these other things feel more real. And that can be societal stuff baked in. There can be so many reasons for that, but I think that we don't allow ourselves to acknowledge that ADHD struggles are worth coping with. And then the second thing is related to that, which is that ADHD struggles they're invisible, right? They're not as tangible as other struggles. When you're grieving something, there's a thing that you're grieving or a person who's lost you're grieving. When you're dealing with sobriety, it's much more, trying to get sober, it's something that you can see so much more easily. If you're worried you're going to lose your job, that's right there, right in front of you. But these are these underlying things that kind of they're like the tapestry underneath everything. Yeah.
Exactly. And there's this sense, I think, of, oh, really? Like you have that? Can you just not? Like sometimes I feel like you will have conversations with people and we'll say, oh, I think I struggle with ADHD. And they're like, oh, like, are you sure?
Yeah.
Like, do we have to add that to the list? And you're like, actually, we do, because I need the systems and strategies to solve this problem.
Yeah. I have a colleague who calls ADHD the bottom of the barrel diagnosis. And this isn't because she actually thinks that, but that's because that's the way. And we work at an ADHD organization. So it's with, a wink, because people just kind of, it gets pushed off because it's just not taken as seriously, it seems, as other things.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to say that it's more important or less important than anything else, but it's important to address it.
Yeah, because a lot of the things that occur, and not all of them, I'm not saying that at all, but a number of things we know are symptoms of underlying ADHD struggles.
Right.
So solving those, that ADHD can sometimes be the underlying issue that's creating a lot of other problems, and then you're solving the problems but not the underlying issue, which is so interesting.
Exactly. And then it's like whack-a-mole. Why is this other problem popping up in my life? I addressed this one thing, but here comes this other thing that I guess is kind of related, maybe not. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Now, you described yourself as holding things together with glue and straw. So what are some of the things that you do? And we'll get into this a little bit later, but what are some of the things you do to help stay grounded and get through a busy, crazy week?
Yeah. And Skye, it's so funny because I remember when we were pre-interviewing, I'm like, I'm not an ADHD coach. I'm not like a product. I don't have the productivity hacks that are going to make people go, wow, I never would have thought of that before. So I know that I do things, but it does sometimes feel like, it's being held together like a house of cards or glue and straw, as you mentioned. One thing that I do that is helpful, but it's certainly not a silver bullet, is, it's so boring, Skye, but I have a giant wall calendar in my kitchen, and I make sure to fill it out with everything, with all of my stuff, all of my husband's stuff, all the dog appointments, my kids' appointments, everything throughout the month, for at the beginning of the month. And then I look at it every Sunday with my husband and make sure that everybody's covered. it doesn't work. I still forget things all the time. But I find that just the act of writing it down makes me feel less overwhelmed. And usually it's the overwhelm that is causing me to kind of have mishaps as opposed to, the stuff itself. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah.
I do. And I know a lot of people who are in that parent space where the wall calendar is key.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. It definitely doesn't always work. Over the weekend, I drove my daughter 40 minutes to get to a volleyball practice that actually wasn't happening that day. So it's the remembering to remember that's really that's a really tricky thing. That prospective memory that I is something I'm still working on, I would say.
Yeah. Are you a business owner who is struggling with ADHD symptoms? Maybe your business is making money, but you know it could be doing more. You feel like you're the bottleneck. You can't get yourself to focus. You start every day with 100 urgent tasks, and you've actually just given up on even trying to delegate. If that sounds like you want to get unstuck, you want to start growing, go ahead and click the link down below. I will show you exactly how to bridge the gap between knowing what to do and doing it consistently, even on the tough days. I've helped people like Tanya triple her revenue by focusing on her most important tasks. Kendall increased her sales volume. James used my focus routine to get his time back. Chelsea secured enough sponsorships to race in Europe, and Kate was able to get $75,000 in grants and go full-time on her business. So if you want to know how to prioritize and delegate when everything is on fire, without that inevitable crash out and the last minute panic, so that you can actually spend time with the people that matters and doing what matters, go ahead and click the link down below and I will show you how to bridge that gap between knowing and doing consistently with ADHD. You've had the opportunity to talk to 100 people with ADHD, which is unusual. I think there's not a lot of people who can say that they've done that, at least in sort of an intense situation.
Yeah.
What is the most interesting? Like which guest stories have stuck with you the most?
Yeah, more than 100 people at this point, probably like 120 at this point. Yeah. I mean, there's so many stories. I'm so grateful to everybody who comes on the show. I mean, I'm sure we'll highlight a few people or storylines through the course of this interview, but the one that always comes to mind when people say what was the most impactful conversation that you've had was a relatively recent one that I had with a man named Steve Wesley. He actually has a YouTube channel called Steve with ADHD. You guys should check it out. And
shout out Steve.
Shout out Steve. Yeah. Steve is great. And Steve was dealing with grief. His wife had died about a year before we recorded our conversation. And he had described his wife as the executive function of the family. And so now here he was a widowed father of 2 boys with ADHD, and he had ADHD and he has ADHD himself. And what really stuck with me in that interview was that he was just going through it. He wasn't polished. He was totally raw. He was just showing in real time how real the struggles of having ADHD can be, especially when you're tackling all these other things in your life. We cried together in that episode. He even revealed to me during the interview that the day of the recording would have been his wife's birthday. It was just a really vulnerable and raw moment. And I'm just so grateful to him that he was willing to share that with me. He blew me away. So I always love to give him a shout out when people ask me that question.
Yeah, 100%. That makes a lot of sense. It's very impactful. What about, you ask people about their aha moments with ADHD. Have you noticed any patterns?
Yeah, definitely. Well, when it comes to women, I'm sure we'll talk about this more later, but the patterns being, oh yeah, I was diagnosed during the pandemic. And yes, I saw a lot of stuff on TikTok, right? So we know that is a pattern, right? What I find interesting is that it's less the thing that made people realize that they might have had ADHD, but more the things that make them realize that, oh, this is a big deal in my life. And oh, I really need to pay attention to this.
Yeah.
Kind of like me with my journal story, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it takes like a good kick in the pants for people to realize that, no, you have to address this. Just like knowing that you have it isn't enough. There are things that you need to do, or that you need to acknowledge, in order to make progress in the way that you want to make progress. But here's the thing, in terms of when you ask me about patterns, Skye, something that really sticks out to me. I find myself, now I'm not a therapist. And sometimes I'm kind of feel like I'm playing that role. I try to make it really clear that I'm not licensed in any way. But it just happens through conversation, right? I've found that, so many people will come on the show and they're just kind of, I'll say, crapping all over themselves instead of the the cuss word. They're saying negative things about themselves, saying, "Oh, I have no willpower," or I'm unable to like make friends," or "I have a bad personality," this and that. And then throughout the course of the interview, they go on to tell me all of these things that they have done that directly contradict that statement that they had made about themselves just minutes before. Yeah. And I am in the lucky position where I get to point that out to them and say, you realize that you just told me that you have no willpower, and yet you just told me the 500 things that you did to achieve your dream. Yeah. Like, you have to have more willpower because you have to work that much harder. And that's always a special moment for me when I can reflect that back to people. Yeah, that's important to me.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think one of the things we do in our program is we have a whole like channel for posting wins, and we really do try and say like, you have to post a win, because I think we really struggle with those. Our brain is always like, well, yes, but did you do it fast enough? Did you do it well enough? Did you do it when you planned to do it versus when it happened? There's so many ways that we can shortchange ourselves from really celebrating the things that we've actually done.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
And this is a kind of other thing, were there any guests whose stories challenged your assumptions about what ADHD was, and maybe how you had thought about it before coming into to what you do now?
Yeah. There are some guests who come on and they talk a lot about the superpower narrative and how ADHD is a superpower. And that is a very powerful narrative. It's an important narrative. And if used well, I think it can help people achieve great things. And I always hold space for that because I understand where that's coming from. I agree that my hyperfocus can be a superpower. I agree that my ability to multitask like crazy can be a superpower. For me personally, I don't find as much value in that narrative as other people do. I worry sometimes that the superpower narrative will lead to, well, then why do you need support? If it's such a superpower, why do you need to go to therapy? Why do you need to do meditation? Why do you need to take medication for this? And I think that sometimes the superpower narrative it's a very privileged thing to be able to say that this is my superpower, right? That means that, and good for you, that means that there's a lot of other things in your life that are allowing it to be your superpower.
Yeah, I agree. I think the superpower conversation is very interesting. Sometimes I'll be on a podcast and people will say, it's a superpower, right? And I'll be like, it's your podcast. I feel awkward about this.
And people should have the space to say, like, I'm glad. Like, everybody talks about their ADHD in different ways. If it's a superpower to you, then great. Good.
Exactly. I mean, I personally like to talk about it as strong strengths, strong weaknesses. I see it as balance. I think there are things that we do better than people who don't have ADHD. Like, there's research to back that up, creative thinking, problem solving, etc. There's things we do worse than people who don't have ADHD. Yeah. And so understanding that you have strengths and you need to find ways to build systems and strategies around your weaknesses so you can leverage your strengths, it gets you to the same outcome without necessarily having the potential insecurity of feeling like, this is a superpower, so why aren't I like running $1 million business right now?
Yeah, it can make you, if not wielded properly, it can make you feel worse about yourself, right? So I just try to, I like the way you framed it, Skye, because if it's used as this blanket statement, then it's like, okay, well then what's wrong with me,
Yeah, exactly. But I do understand as well why people want to champion the strengths of it, because when I got diagnosed, I'm sure you're the same, you go on the internet and you're like, what does this mean? And the internet is like bad things. It means bad things, pretty much.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So what would you say is the most unexpected thing you learned about ADHD from your guest? Something that just took you by surprise?
So it's funny how the things that take us by surprise are maybe things that we kind of know in our core. We kind of knew in our core all along, but somebody articulates it in a way that you're like, oh, yeah. I interviewed Patricia Sung, who's the host of Motherhood and ADHD. She was fantastic. And she talked about how we often talk about with ADHD, like you're going from 0 to 100 really fast. And she reframed that for me in a way that I talk about all the time now, which is she's like, no, we're going from 0 to 99 slowly but surely throughout the day. Right. Like getting like piling things on that we have trouble coping with and just like making our way through it, making our way through it. It's that 99 to 100 that is kind of like the explosion. Right.
Yeah.
So I think it helped me be kinder to myself. It helped me usually when I hit that 99, it's after work when I'm home with my kids, which is when I want to be present and when I want to be a great mother and a great wife, and a great dog owner and all these things. But then I go directly to 100. So in my family's eyes, it looks like, oh, Laura, mom or Laura just went from 0 to 100 like that. And I can be like, I'm sorry, I got to 99 at work today. And now I'm at 100.
Yeah.
So it was interesting.
And it can be tricky. Yeah, it can be tricky as well. It is interesting because, with ADHD, especially, we can be pretty time blind. We're not necessarily paying attention. We're not necessarily aware of like, hey, my dial's ticking up. That's interesting. Sometimes we're hyper focusing on something else. So sort of I guess the mental equivalent of going like, hey, did I hit myself on something like a door frame and I didn't realize, because
totally,
there's a bruise that I didn't know was there. We can sometimes just not be in our bodies in many ways.
Right. Yeah. Especially when you hit that 100. Right. Like that's some people use like the emotional dysregulation comes in. It's like, what is mom doing kind of stalking around the house right now?
Yeah. We're like, oh, I have emotions. Hi.
Yeah. And I have trouble managing them sometimes, similar to you guys. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Well, this kind of brings me to my next question, which is, you're managing a team, you're hosting a podcast, you're parenting 2 kids, you're coaching volleyball and doing other things. What has surprised you about managing that with an ADHD brain? What's been easier than you expected or harder than you expected?
I mean, what surprises me is that I'm doing it at all. And again, I really want to preface that I have great support systems in my life. So I have a spouse who truly is fit. We are 50-50 with, parenting and housework and all of that. And I have a steady job and I have great friends, so I don't, I don't ever want to diminish the struggles of people who don't have those kinds of things. Right.
Yeah.
But what's been harder, which shouldn't be surprising, but was harder to anticipate, I would say, is the amount of little things that stack up when you're not just accountable for yourself, but you're accountable for a team of people and accountable for, a team of people either at your work or at your home, right? And the way that it just can pile up. What has surprised me is that it hasn't broken me. And I've been thinking a lot about why that is. And I kind of came to, I think, 2 realizations, which is the first being that somehow unconsciously, I'm not exactly sure how I got here, but I've started to trust people more. I think as people with ADHD, especially women with ADHD who are responsible, like women in general are responsible for so much, emotional burden and caregiving and, taking care of things in general, in addition to having a job, right? I didn't believe that anybody else should be helping me, right? Throughout all of that. So starting to be able to trust people, to trust my team at work, to trust my spouse, to even now as my kids get older, to trust my kids to do the things, that has been a huge reason for, for me to be able to do what I do, to trust my friends in the community to not judge me when I need help getting kids to practices every single week because I either forgot and they know that I forgot, or I'm just not available to take them. So that trust has been a big part of it. For me on a personal level, though, I think this is going to come off wrong, but I'm just going to say it. Lowering my expectations, understanding that it doesn't have to look the way that I thought it was going to look. I'm going to give you an example. When I was in my 20s and even in my 30s, I was like, I'm going to write a book. I have to write a book one day. About what? I have no idea, Skye. No idea.
You're like, I just have to.
It was just this feeling of like, I feel like I should write a book. What would it mean if I didn't have a book? Right. When I finally released when I realized like, I don't actually want to write a book, right? I'm not going to chase that, nor do I need to. That's just one of many examples of things that you're just like, no, this is enough. Right. And I think as people with ADHD, we have trouble with like, this is enough. We can get overly optimistic. We can be, we can go down rabbit holes and we want to do so many things. And a lot of therapy has helped me kind of take a beat and realize that why?
Yeah.
Just why? Yeah. Why do I need to do all of that? I'm already doing, it is enough what you're doing.
Yeah. It is a really great point. And I think a book somehow, it's funny, I think it stands out as a thing. You write a book, you're an author, that's something. A lot of times with ADHD, and this has been my own experience and just what I've noticed in other people, we are sort of looking for markers of success, something that we can plant a flag in the sand and say, I did this. And sometimes though, what those are, what we choose those to be, are a fun combination of just what we chose when we were 8 and also what feels hard. Because if it feels easy, then it can't have been that difficult. And in reality, sometimes the thing you're doing is actually quite hard for a lot of other people, but it doesn't feel like it would count as like a marker of success. And that can be what we're looking for when we have ADHD and we have some of those insecurities about that. We know from the research, we experience a lot more self-criticism because of how we grow up.
Yeah, exactly. And I think honestly, hosting the show has really helped me with that because I'm constantly doing that with and for other people, being like, but you did do all those things. What do you mean you haven't achieved anything? You have achieved all those things. Yeah. Eventually, some of that must have gotten in. And I'm willing to be like, no, I'm not going to. I don't need to go out and prove that I'm young and vibrant this weekend. I'm going to stay right here. Do absolutely nothing.
I'll just vibe. Yeah. It is funny, that idea, people say, oh, I haven't done much. And I'm like, you realize you're on a podcast, right? Like people are listening to you speak about what you've done. So you kind of done nothing.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So take me through a little bit of that leadership, because you're a leader. And I think that is a conversation I hear a lot of people talk about, both in their own businesses or as part of a department. The idea of stepping up and leading a team can feel incredibly intimidating if you've spent a lot of time just trying to manage yourself.
Yeah, it is. And imposter syndrome comes in a lot. I think often as leaders, we have a misconception that we have to be able to do everything better than the people who report to us. And I don't think that that's true. Management does not mean that you know how to do everything or that you've achieved everything. And really embracing that and approaching my team and the people I work with candor and honesty has been really helpful. I don't think that I would be a successful leader if I weren't able to self-advocate and say to, the people I work with, I actually need you to put that in an email for me because I will forget it. That kind of thing. Or, this is going to, maybe this will resonate with some of your listeners. I don't know. It's such a specific example, but we live in business right now. Decks, Google slide presentations are such currency. Right.
I've helped with many a slide deck.
I'm sure you have. And, I'm not bad at them. I've gotten better, but my ADHD tendencies, when I'm making them, I will get so fixated on how to make one slide look just right that I won't get anything else done and I won't be able to get my ideas through. Right. And I'm just so overly fixated. So I've actually found that, I have people I work with who are great at like showcasing ideas in a visual form, which is not something that I'm good at. So I ask them and I say, hey, I need to put this together. Like, how would you organize this in a presentation? Because I know that I know what I want to do and I can speak to you about it very clearly, but like, I can't put it together in this format as easily as you can. And rather than me spending 3 hours on it, maybe you could spend 15 minutes with me,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have felt comfortable doing that years ago, but I do now. And that's been crucial.
Yeah, 100%. Like so many times we're like, but I have to do this thing and it's on my list. And it's like, oh, it doesn't have to be on your list. And actually, especially if you're the leader, your job is to lead. And that's really what you're doing. And it's funny you should mention that because the slide deck conversation came up recently. I have something called the Remarkable. I've got it right here actually. And so I will draw on this and draw pictures and write notes. And then that goes into Miro and I teach from Miro. I don't do slide decks.
Beautiful.
Because if I did, I would just be doing less presentations because it's just too much. Yeah. So it's something that I think, you get more comfortable. You're like, this is how I think. This is how I communicate. At the end of the day, do you want this to be a really interesting conversation where you learn a lot? Or do you want a really perfect slide deck 3 times a month?
Yeah. I think that sometimes, especially in business, we get so caught up with everything being so polished all the time that it does take some of the realness out of things or the things that actually resonate with people, whether that's your audiences or the people who you work with. So presenting in a way that makes sense for you it's just smart. It's just smart business.
Yeah. Not to mention, and I just want to, for those of you who are listening, see if you can relate. The second someone opens a slide deck, a lot of team members just go, right, time to turn my brain off. We're getting the slide deck out. So it doesn't always give you the result that you're looking for anyway, which is so frustrating if you spent time on it. No, definitely. So what piece of advice would you give to somebody who has been promoted to a leadership position and they're kind of starting out, dipping their toe in? What advice would you give them?
To somebody with ADHD specifically?
Yes. Yeah. Somebody with ADHD.
Yeah. I would say that you are going to have those heart palpitating moments. It's going to feel like everything is barreling down on you at any given moment. And I would say, please know that it's going to be okay. I know that sounds so cheesy, but I can't tell you how many times I have had to like go into the bathroom and close the door and just so I can be like, oh my gosh, there's no way that I'm going to be able to pull all of this off. There's absolutely no way. And it always seems to work out. I know that's not a very satisfying answer, but like after that happening enough times, it's a real one. And I found that just reminding myself that like, this is not going to be the end of the world and I am going to find a way through this no matter how it goes. Just reminding myself of that over and over again, it makes me calmer. And it's in the calmness that I'm able to actually prioritize and start to get things done.
Yeah, 100%. Awesome. Well, I just have a few questions I like to ask everyone who comes on this podcast. So the first thing is, what is a professional win that you're the most proud of?
Well, I would love to talk about, this is probably one of them, the podcast study that we did recently. So as listeners have heard me say, I host a show called ADHD Aha, which is from understood.org. We are a nonprofit organization that focuses on learning and thinking differences like ADHD and dyslexia. We provide free expert vetted resources. And we recently partnered with Torrens University, Australia, to do a study on why women with ADHD turn to podcasts. What do they expect from podcasts? And number 2, what are they getting out of them? Right. So we did this study. We had over 400 participants, all women with ADHD, all listeners of ADHD Aha. and or misunderstood our ADHD and Women podcast channel. And the results were really interesting and really exciting. And you, as a woman with ADHD who also hosts a podcast, Skye, I feel like this is very relevant to your life. We found from our study that women with ADHD trust podcasts for health information and health literacy more than they trust mainstream media and more than they trust social media. Right. So number one, like that was very, very interesting to learn. The second thing that we learned, and this was specific to our shows, but I think it's meaningful for all of us who are in the space creating content about ADHD for women or all people with ADHD. We learned that our podcasts actually provide hope for our listeners. I'm actually going to look down so I can see a statistic. We found that 86% of people said that they found more hope after listening to our podcasts. Over 90% said that they felt more connected to women with ADHD. And more than 70% said that these shows help them overcome shame. Now, why do I think that this is really important right now? It's not just to like give me and our team a big pat on the back or something like that, but because the rate of ADHD diagnoses in women has nearly doubled in the last few years since the pandemic. But the amount of services for women has not kept up with that pace, right? So it's a lot of responsibility for podcast hosts to make sure that we're not putting out misinformation, number one. And it's just, podcasts, like we're meeting the moment, right? How popular are podcasts right now? If we can be a source of support for all these women with ADHD who really don't have anywhere else to turn, it's not what I intended. When I'm thrilled about it. It's not why we created the show, but it's a happy consequence of doing the show. So that would be it.
Yeah. That's so interesting. It really does make me think, because one of the things we do on our show is we go through academic journal articles every couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, well, I'm glad we do based on your research. That's so interesting.
No, you really should. You should be really proud of that. I mean, that's where people are going because it's where the people trust their hosts, right? So it's a lot of responsibility, but I know that you're up for it, Skye. And I try to be up for it. Yeah. I've
been an academic, so I just see it as digital academia, moving into a different space.
Yeah.
On the other side, what would you say is a sort of a professional embarrassment or failure that is shaped you? You've learned from it.
I remember I talked about before how like I just decided I'm not going to write a book. So I was a freelance writer throughout my career. Even when I had full-time jobs, I was still freelancing and writing about music and movies and pop culture and stuff like that. And it was very stressful because I'll leave that to the side. It was very stressful. But I remember one time, and it still embarrasses me to this day to even say it out loud. I got so excited after watching the movie Inception. Do you remember that movie?
Yeah, I do.
It blew my mind so much at the time that I went home and I wrote a movie review. And then I sent it to the editor of a magazine, a prominent magazine who I happen to know, and put him in a very uncomfortable position. And I said, hey, I wrote this review. If you have any interest in publishing it, then maybe go ahead and just do that. And in hindsight, I felt he had to say, no, number one, we're not accepting reviews on this film. Number two, this isn't a very good review that you've written.
Oh, no.
But it was such an example of ADHD impulsivity, like grandiosity.
Yeah.
So it kind of helped me learn to pump the brakes a little bit and to take a beat before assuming everyone would find what I thought interesting to be interesting.
Yeah, you got to check with at least one other person. But I will say that's such a relatable story, the amount of things that we do. Like the website's up and everyone's like, the website for what? And you're like, the thing. We're going to do it. It's happening now. That's exactly. So great. And if you were to have sort of a personal motto, a personal quote, that you live life by, what would that be?
Everything is temporary. It kind of goes back to what I was saying before.
I love that.
Some people look at it as like a defeatist or fatalistic thing. I don't. I find it to be very freeing because I get in those moments where I'm really dark and really deep into my mood spirals and my ADHD piling up of everything.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And just, it will end. You won't feel that way forever. You just won't.
Awesome. Well, it's been wonderful to have you on, Laura. Please tell everybody how can they find you, where can they find you, and where can they find your wonderful podcast?
Everybody should check out ADHD Aha. You can find it anywhere you listen to podcasts. That's ADHD Aha, AHA exclamation point. You can find it on our website, Spotify, Apple, all of the things. You should also check out understood.org, which is where I've worked for quite some time. It's a wonderful organization, and we offer resources for parents and for women. And they're all free. They're all credible. There are a lot of questions out there right now with everything happening in the world about what certain changes might mean for medication, for special education in the United States. So we can help out on that front. We can provide good information for you. Yeah. Thank you, Skye.
That's great. No worries. Well, thanks so much for such an interesting conversation. I'm sure a lot of people have taken a lot away from this. And I look forward to being on your podcast. That's the
I can't wait, Skye. We're going to have a ball. Yes.
I'm have a 100%.
Deep conversation with you. Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Thank you for listening, and a big thank you to Adam for making us sound great, Anastasia for making us look great, and Jess for putting it all together. We couldn't do it without you. If you want to find out more about us, or you want to deep dive into ADHD strategies, particularly for business owners, you can find us on Instagram at Unconventional Organization. That is where the community is. That is where we are chatting. You can see all the fun and exciting things that we're bringing to the table there. So please go find us. DM me any questions, any thoughts you have. I always like talking with you guys. See you soon.